Content warning. This episode of Will It Homestuck includes spoilers for the Harry Potter series, mention of trauma and abuse, discussion of racism and bigotry in and outside of fiction, J.K. Rowling, discussion of the Homestuck Epilogues, and Yiffany Longstocking. Listener discretion is advised. Big thanks to Danny the Spoonlord, Fleece, Kylo Ren, John Riley, Starshine, and Sylph of Breath, our $5 nut patrons, for helping out the show. Our theme song, Sunbanger, is by @_Tittle on Instagram. Enjoy the episode.
Oh, no, yeah. Luna full anarcho-communist.
Luna is the anarcho-communist cat girl that is turning the frogs gay. I'm the Vriska of the podcast.
And I'm the third Horcrux. And welcome to Will It Homestuck. This episode, it's me, Clever, and a new host. You want to introduce yourself?
I am Sin, and I'm from the Discord, I guess. I've been mentioned a couple of times as that person who keeps calling Vriska an idiot.
Yeah, you were one of the first people to listen to the podcast. You've been on the train for a minute now.
Yeah, I think the first, it was like the last episode that was out before, or the one that I started listening to was the part 1 of My Hero Academia. Or, not that, it was...
Okay.
Let me actually check, I can...
Yeah, because you were, I think, our second or third patron, because our first was Sylph of Breath, and I think it would have been you next, if not...
Yeah, I think so.
Somebody else. Yeah. So, you've been on the train for a minute, so it's about time we got you on the show. This week, we are covering Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, I have no idea how I signed up for this, because I am not a fan of Harry Potter.
It was a little serendipitous. I put it on the roster, months ago, and it got cycled in our latest cycle of episodes, and Bucky was like, listen, man, I really, really, really hate Harry Potter. I think I might die if I have to record an episode on it. And I was like, okay. And then at about that time, Goldie, Starshine, and the Belmonts recorded their Cats episode, and that was when we started having more people on as different hosts. And at about that same time, you went off in the Discord server about an AU you had come up with where Harry's a trans woman. And, like, all these things, like, lined up. And Bucky was like, hey, we have one of our friends on the server currently losing their mind about Harry Potter right about 2 weeks before we record our Harry Potter episode. So can I just switch with them?
That's valid, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have opinions on Harry Potter. They're not positive opinions, but there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
They've changed.
Everybody's got lots of opinions. Yeah, for sure. I grew up, the first book I can remember reading was book 5, the Phoenix, Order of the Phoenix, Jesus. No, I grew up with Harry Potter, and, like, I remember loving it. It was one of those books that, like, got me into fantasy and sci-fi and shit. And as I grew older, I just realized more and more and more that J.K. Rowling isn't a great writer. And I liked Harry Potter just because I was young and I hadn't read any other books yet. Coming back to it is always, like, weird, because I keep finding more and more things about it that I used to love, but now I really super don't.
I read it, I don't really remember reading them originally very well, because I was pretty young, and I only really read them, like, once or twice, so, like, it was never really a big hyperfixation of mine, but it feels like I read them all in, like, a day, but a little bit more than that, like a week or so, and so it was, like, I never really got into it, but it was, like, a thing, I guess. I was like, by the time I got around to reading them, they were all out. It's actually interesting, they're in the same mental category of time when I was reading books as the Warrior Cat series. Is it really the the most book-selling, like all books, or?
They're so big. Harry Potter is, I mean, best-selling book series of all time, right? Like, that's not nothing. They're just everywhere. They're number 1 or number 2 in human history. They're either just ahead of the Bible or just behind the Bible.
That's weird. Or wild, I guess, not weird. I don't know, like, they're very books. Like, I mean, like, going back to them, it's like, I can't figure out why this was so popular. Like, as opposed to all the other stuff that's, like, not to say better, but also better? I think they're very unoffensive.
They're very friendly and kind of easy to read in a way, like, not that they're super simply written, but they're written in a way that, like, kind of invites you in. And, like, they take a lot of effort to make you feel like you're welcome within the setting, except the setting itself is not welcoming to a lot of people. But, like,
I mean, a lot of it comes down to the hyper-flexible mythology thing. With the Hogwarts houses are just, like, one of the earliest popular examples of what the class-spec system is, which is why it's pretty convenient for a project like this.
I think a big part of what probably sparked their popularity was the US audience for it. Because, like, the more I've grown up and learned about actual English history and, like, the culture over across the pond, the more I realize how kind of plain the setting is in terms of, like, oh yeah, that's just an average British boarding school. Like, other than the explicitly magical elements, a lot of this stuff is normal for a kid in England who went to private school. But for kids in America, that's not true at all. Kids in America, boarding school is this weird, interesting place all its own. You almost don't need the magical elements in order to kind of be wrapped up in it. One of the things I remember, like, adoring about the books when I was growing up was, like, you're telling me I could have a sleepover with my school friends every night? That sounds amazing!
That might be why I never really got into it. I think a lot of it has to do with, like, the Dursley situation is almost comedically horrible. It's like, I mean, not that, like, abuse like that isn't a real thing, but like, the way it's treated is, it's not treated as seriously as, like, if you just list the things that the Dursleys do outside of the context or the way the prose treats it, it's like, there's a lot of serious stuff there.
Yeah.
That kind of deserves to be treated better than it is. Like, it comes up a little bit in the later books, but it's never really unpacked and, like, to its fullest extent. It feels like it's just a way to contrast Hogwarts as that much better.
It's the problem that you run into when you want to write something that grows up with its audience, where you write book 1, it's for 11 and 12-year-olds, and an easy way to contrast the boring normal world with the cool magic world is, ugh, look at your lame aunt and uncle. Don't they suck? Versus, yeah, your teacher can turn into a cat. And so the kids reading it view the Dursleys as this, like, cartoonish, unthreatening evil. They're not meant to be seen as abusers. They're meant to be seen as Disney villains, you know?
That makes more sense, actually, thinking about it that way.
But then you get into the later books where there's, like, murder and imprisonment and fascism taking over the government. And you're like, hey, why are the mom and dad from Matilda in this?
Yeah, I didn't mean to laugh. Like, those aren't funny, but, like, the way you said, and then you go into the later books, and there's murder. You sound exactly like John Mulaney. I diagnosed you with Peter Porker.
Listen, he's a fun character.
He is. Release the R-rated John Mulaney cut.
God. But no, like, that tone, it gets so, like, even if J.K. Rowling were a good writer, that tone would be really hard to juggle in terms of having these characters whose initial purpose was just cartoon evil in a setting where your main character is actually an anti-fascist protester.
Not that she sees it that way, of course. Homestuck does that too, with, like, Dave and Rose specifically, is, like, very much that same sort of, like, a lot of people thought that was, I mean, I read it as funny the first time I read it. I didn't think about it at all. And it's like, wait a minute. But there isn't really, I mean, there's some of that moment with, like, later books, but it doesn't really, not to the point where, like, that contrast is ever really, I don't know, it does feel like she tries to do that a little bit in the later books, but not enough.
And I mean, that's the ultimate shortcoming of Rowling's writing, is it's very clear that on a pure creative level, she's got a lot of experience. Like, she's good at coming up with these really interesting hooks and these concepts for a setting and a story.
It's just not enough.
Yeah, she just can't follow through. Like, she comes up with the ideas and never stops to consider what they mean and where they might come from and how they might be used.
That's why there's such a wealth of fan fiction about Harry Potter. Like, it's like one of the big fandoms. It's one of, like, I mean, I wasn't on the internet with, like, for the big Harry Potter stuff. That was never really my place in the internet, and especially, like, I was a little late for that. But it's, like, one of the foundational media in the internet age. It's right up there. Anything about fandom history is going to talk about it. So, like, I would compare it to, like, Spock and Kirk in terms of, like Drarry specifically, and being, like, major influences on how fan fiction works. Like, Harry Potter AUs are super popular for a reason.
They are. I was actually reading a fic earlier this year that I need to finish, but it was really good. That was a Full Metal Alchemist Harry Potter crossover.
Oh, really? I actually read one of those too. Might be the same, but...
That would be amazing. But, like, it was this really cool fic where Ed basically, like, crosses over in Harry's 5th year, and they follow these, like, parallel stories through the 6th and 7th years.
I think we might have read the same fic.
I mean, it's very likely.
It's weird because I don't read that much Harry Potter fic. I don't read that much Full Metal Alchemist fic. And I definitely don't read that much crossover fic. I think I might have read it on, like, the FixReg page, found it on the FixRec page on TV Tropes for one of them.
That wouldn't surprise me. It's really well written.
Yeah, I don't remember it very well, but there was a bit about, like, there was a second part, or not second part, but, like, a short follow-up about Sirius, where, like, he might have got, where he went to, what's the place called? The Full Metal Alchemist world.
Yeah, Amestris.
And it was sad.
It's entirely possible. I haven't finished the fic, so I couldn't tell you, but basically, like, it was really good, and it capitalized on so many of the elements in the Harry Potter universe that are just kind of dangled and left dead in the actual books. It's one of those, you were saying before, like, one of the things that makes Harry Potter very ripe for homestuckification is the houses and the flexible mythology. And I think another reason that they are kind of a natural fit is they're things people, like, both of them are things people love, but they are also both things that the people who love them recognize have a lot of big problems. And that inspires us to basically make stuff about it to make it better, to improve on the problems we see and make a better version of the thing we like.
I mean, like, the Homestuck Epilogues are basically just the Cursed Child, but on purpose this time. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to you. I'm personally fond of them, but I definitely see why people would not be. I'm not very good when it comes to disagreeing with people on stuff.
They're definitely, like, really contentious. And, like, I don't know, the epilogues are such a thing. You could write books discussing them, I feel like, because there's so much. Everybody has some kind of extremely strong opinions on the epilogues. It's kind of impossible to sum up the whole discussion.
Meanwhile, the Cursed Child, it's also a lot. There hasn't been, I don't know how much, if the response was really equivalent. I haven't really seen the same sort of I can't really imagine seeing as much of a creative boom as in response to, like, the Cursed Child as there was in response to, like, the Homestuck Epilogues, because, like, Harry Potter has never really stopped existing. It's very continuous in a very much you don't stop hearing about Harry Potter because there's always a new way to make money out of it.
The Harry Potter fandom seems, they're not quite as intense as the Homestuck fandom in my experience. Like, they're definitely everywhere, and they're definitely...
Not anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you still see a lot of people who put their houses in their bios and stuff, but, like, they're very mild about it, right? If someone's a Harry Potter fan, they just like the movies or they like the books, and that's kind of it. Whereas Homestuck is this living, breathing thing, has such an intense community that, like, as much as I love it, we can get at each other's throats occasionally.
We have gotten at each other's throats.
Yeah. Let's get into the first part of the show, class specting. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts about some of our favorite problematic faves.
Oh boy.
Let's start with Harry, obviously. Why don't you go first? I want to see what you think.
Witch of Light and Prospect. You haven't really been doing the Dreamer Moons, but I think the Dreamer Moons are pretty important, like, or at least like a part of the class specting process, because like it's like there are a couple of instances where you've given characters canon class specs, and I agree, but I would also give them the other Dreaming Moon, like, and that sort of accounts for like a third of the differences.
You're absolutely right. We have kind of dropped that ball a little bit. Did you say Witch of Life?
Light, like relevancy, light.
Oh, light. Okay. Run that by me. Explain your reasoning on that one. That's interesting.
Well, I was actually thinking about life a little bit too. There's very much an interesting aspect of light that comes from like her where time is very villain coded, light is hero coded. And I'm not just saying this because of Vriska. Rose has kind of got it going on a little bit too, although she's very much rejecting that, and like her arc and like the Strider's arcs are about like coming to terms with like their relationship to heroism, and like her quest is very much, she reacts to it as a like it's a hero's journey, which Harry Potter very much is a hero's journey. There's a very, and like relevancy, and fortune, like he's the most relevant just sort of by default, like just like because of who his ancestors were, his family, and like he doesn't like where like Vriska has her has like Urania and like Mind Fang, and like sort of like that legacy that she is like lives with every day, like it's like very much defines her. Like other characters care a lot about ancestors too, but like she's the only one that we actually, Urania, like Mind Fang is the only ancestor that we actually get to hear from, because, and Vriska only gets to hear from her too, is the only ancestor to like have like a specific journal. And which I was thinking like the familiar with Voldemort actually, where it's like, because like the only reason he's special is because of Voldemort, the twin wands connection thing, which, and like the scar stuff, it's like he's extraordinary because of that.
He's kind of forced into the spotlight from birth, right? The relevancy is a part of his life for his entire life, whether he knows it or not. I can definitely see light, yeah.
And fortune, like in terms of coins, like he has a literal vault of treasure. What the fuck is up with that?
Well, actually, I don't remember the specifics, but it's a Pottermore thing that his dad inherited, I think, like a magical soap company or something like that. Basically, his dad got rich doing some boring upper class England shit, and Harry just is born into wealth.
Wow, J.K. Rowling really is a neoliberal.
Yeah, that's fun. Okay, Light is interesting. I hadn't thought of him as a Light player.
She just is.
Also, mostly unrelated, but I was thinking of that scene in Diagon Alley, and the cage that they put Hedwig in the movies is way too small. That pisses me off. I have a bird that's like around the size, a little bit bigger than my fist, and that cage would be too small for her.
Yeah, because birds need to, like, fly. There were probably people, like, whose job it was to make sure that didn't happen. There's all sorts of Hollywood union stuff about that.
Praise be to unions. Hollywood should have more unions.
Shockingly, Hollywood has one of the highest concentrations of unions in any industry, specifically because of the Screen Actors Guild, which is like, if you want to work in Hollywood, you are legally required to be a member of the Screen Actors Guild. It's...
But not for visual effects artists, of course.
Well, yeah, obviously. Because they don't do real work. Come on.
I know you're being tongue-in-cheek, but I do want to fist fight you over the way you said that.
I was being sarcastic, I promise.
I know. I do want to fist fight you for a number of reasons. That's not the most of them.
You know, valid. I deserve to be fist fought.
I deserve to get into a fist fight with somebody. I am small and full of rage.
They're not as fun as you think.
Well, I don't know how they feel. I've never been in one.
Yeah, fair. Getting punched in the face hurts.
I mean, presumably, yeah.
My class spec for Harry is an heir. Like, I have him as an heir no matter what. But I have his aspect split between heart, breath, and life.
Why?
So, heir because he is kind of the prototypical hero. Like you mentioned before, like, Harry Potter is nothing if not a classic hero's journey. And, like, that is the archetype that the heir pulls off the most. The heir is the Luke Skywalker, the Harry Potter, the Frodo. Like, they are the protagonist class.
Oh, that must be why I'm class-specting them. I have class-spected them as transgender.
It's because no character is cis until proven otherwise.
Politely discourse with me on Twitter, J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling, turn on your location. I just want to beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, and hunt you for sport.
So my notes say he is a prototypical heir, inheriting his parents' wealth and legacy, as well as the responsibility of whatever mystery nonsense is in a given book. He has a destiny beyond his explicit characterization, which codes him with breath. A lack of inner life speaks to his nature as an audience insert. Which I also think is where you probably got a lot of your, like, what if I could do a June Egbert about this?
I actually like pronouncing that as 8-bert as a way to, like, do the B, to the B as an 8, because there's no other way to distinguish it other than Egbert, which is kind of silly, but yeah.
Because, like, audience surrogate characters tend to be kind of blank, right? That's the point. You're supposed to put pieces of yourself in them.
He's, like, actually very interesting because, I mean, to an extent he's blank, but, like, he's also really snarky, which I've seen, like, on Tumblr. Like, he's not as blank as, I don't know, like, what does it mean for a character to be blank and self-inserty anyway? Which I guess is a whole nother question.
I don't know. I've always struggled to get a handle on his personality, even though I know there are textual pieces that give us insight into his thought process and, like, who he is. Whenever I read any of the books, my brain is like, none of these feel like they're part of him. They feel like it's just J.K. Rowling describing how we should be feeling. That has always felt very breath to me. I mean, not always, because I didn't always know aspects, but, like...
I think that's more of an heir thing, because, like you said, I mean, the John Egbert is, at least... until Vriska shows up, the protagonist of Homestuck, is like there's a lot of Harry Potter in Homestuck, and that's not fair. There's a lot of responses to Harry Potter in Homestuck. Like, not to bring the Eridan into the room prematurely, but Eridan.
I mean, yeah, like, the Emperor trolls are, like, that's kind of the joke of their characters, or at least the joke that both of their characters share. Is that they're both shitty Harry Potter, you know? I don't think that's inappropriate at all to bring up of, like, there is a lot of Harry Potter in Homestuck, and a lot of it comes through the racist and the weird desperate loner.
Snape is obviously, like, Cronus is more obviously Harry Potter because of, like, the, like, literally Iranian. The Dance Sisters are weird. The Dance Sisters are really weird, but, like, he's very blatantly Harry Potter, but, like, the characterization very much fits with Snape of, like, desperateness and, like, the clinginess and, like, weird racism stuff. Okay, also, I want to bring up something weird that I have with Harry Potter. The racism, in real life, there isn't an actual difference between the victims of racism and the racists. In Harry Potter, there is. Like, Muggles are objectively worse. They can't do magic. And wizards and stuff can do magic. That's kind of fucked up. I don't have anything to say beyond that's uncomfortable, but it is.
I mean, that's the thing about engaging with Harry Potter for more than a year is, like, every time you think you've unlocked the grossest part, you find something else that's worse.
There's always another layer of shittiness. It's kind of impressive.
It really is. But then, like, that makes it more interesting because, like, how did a generation of kids grow up with this and not see it and not, like, notice even the most blatant shit, you know?
I think a lot of people noticed one or two things, and then they saw that and went, that's a little uncomfortable. Like, for me, it was hey, the Muggles are kind of worse, and the house elf thing didn't make me uncomfortable because of the house elf thing. It made me uncomfortable because of how it made Hermione out. Like, it made her feel stupid to me, and she didn't seem stupid. I didn't realize how fucked up the whole concept of house elves in general was.
It makes Hermione the butt of a joke, and it very heavily implies that slave ownership is good, because slaves like being slaves.
Yeah, I mean, like, why? You didn't need to do that.
Well, she didn't, but J.K. Rowling, a wealthy white woman raised in the country that started the transatlantic slave trade, there you go.
It's like, it's weird, like, there's like really like two conflicting sides of Harry Potter, which is what it wants to be saying, and then there's like what's going on if you look at it, like, and then like what she thinks it's saying. Tonks is a non-binary lesbian. That shapeshifting state, that's like every gender non-conforming lesbian I know talking as a gender non-conforming lesbian.
I mean, that's the thing that a lot of TERFs who make kids media end up doing, is like fucking Butch Hartman had a lot of trans shit in Fairly Odd Parents. A lot of TERFs who make kids media end up making really trans media.
All roads lead back to transgender. And it's because, and like, yeah, I don't know, I think the books only start getting interesting when they get to book 5, because I made myself reread all of the first one, and then I was like, alright, maybe I'll read some of the later ones, and then immediately went to book 5, because that's when it starts getting.
I mean, that's when Luna is introduced, and she is one of only 2 characters I give a shit about.
I think that Luna and Ginny should kiss.
Absolutely.
I also think that everyone deserves to go to therapy and not be cops.
Yeah. I don't know, J.K. Rowling, you kind of gave Harry a thing that he loves doing and that he's good at for all 7 years of his Hogwarts career in Quidditch, and then just decided, no, he's going to become a cop. Because reason, I guess. So do we want to settle on air or wit?
Air. I think air of light. Especially the fortune stuff, like that. I was also thinking about, like, the fortune and fame. The wealth can also be life, and the fame can also be a bit of blood, but like with them like together and like the ancestralness of it all, especially with how he's like sort of, the thing about Homestuck as a story is that like breath in there is like, it's a very meandering story in a way that sort of requires a breathy protagonist in a way, like, but light is a lot more focused sort of narratives in the way that in Harry Potter is. When Vriska comes up and like Rose too, they know what their story is about. Like Rose in the Meet epilogues is very much, she's like the gothic, the lead of a goth. I don't remember where I read this or heard this, but I think it was probably on Pigeon Pod, where she's the gothic romance novel protagonist dying of tuberculosis, and she's kind of loving it. She's living her best goth life. Well, no, she's not. Like, even when those bleeds are like, they're part of the story that they know they're part of, and they're frustrated when the story isn't about them, because that feels like the story is being wrong, and Harry Potter isn't smart enough to engage with that on purpose.
I would argue for life over light. I
went for overlapping, multiple overlaps, so I actually had some ancestor stuff with the overlapping.
Okay, I'll concede light for Harry for now, but I will come back to that, because I want to defend my life thesis a bit later on. What about Ron?
I didn't really have a class, but but have
Blood?
But
okay.
I eventually went with air because I couldn't think of anything else. I don't understand Ron.
Yeah, he's like a little slippery. He's kind of hard to get a hold of. I had him as a page of heart. He's part comic relief, part best friend, and part youngest sibling. He's very much a page in my brain. His main conflict has to do with A, living under the shadow of his brothers, and B, filling his potential, which is an extremely page thing. And given that potential has to do with his identity and coming to his own in terms of the things he's good at and like becoming somebody he can be proud of himself, that gives him heart to me. So, page of heart.
I did Bud because of like his relationships with others is very much like he has like a the huge family, not just being the youngest sibling, but like having like different relationships to everyone. And he binds the main cast together. Like both Hermione and Harry are like outsiders. Like he's the one with like the knowledge of the world. Kind of makes me think of like he's like that. This is mostly about the first book, but I was just thinking of like that book of like children's stories in like book 7, I think it is. I haven't reread them. Where it's like, and Karkat's interest in rom-coms. Like he's very much a native to the culture in a way that like Hermione and Harry just will never be.
And that gives him like a competence that people don't talk about a whole lot, or at least I haven't seen talked about.
It's definitely undermined in the movies, of course, because those movies take everything about him and give it to Hermione.
I've heard that from a lot of big-time fans.
Yeah, I got that from a bunch of big-time YouTubers. I haven't seen those movies in a long time.
Yeah, same. I haven't seen him since, like, high school at the latest. There's this potential we see from him with things like wizard chess and, like, just knowing bits and pieces about his own world that gives him the potential to fulfill a lot of different things. It's why he becomes head boy in the future. It's why he is like one of the most capable people in the later books, regardless of how much he becomes a comic relief. Where, like, he does know his shit, and he does have a lot of potential, and I think he does fulfill it. I think he does get to a point where...
I put Neville as a page.
Yeah, I could see Neville as a page. I didn't give any notes for him. I kind of stripped down the cast and did most of the central characters and left most of the other people out.
He's also, I also remembered, he plays a knight in, like, the wizard chess game at the end of book 1. It's not really relevant, because I didn't think about giving him knight. Like, I thought about it but I didn't want to diagnose him with Karkat. Because he's not Karkat. He does not get to be Karkat.
Like you were saying before with alternate dreamer moons having a big effect, I could see him being
Karkat
a
prospect. Is
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's right. That actually makes more sense for Ron, too. Like, a Durst Knight of Heart, or a Knight of Blood.
No, I put him as prospect because he doesn't really... Like, the thing about Durst dreamers is that they have this really solid sense of self, and, like, they think they know what their issues are. They're usually wrong, but they have an understanding of what that is, and I don't really... They have, like, self-awareness, and, like, I don't know if Ron really... I don't know. Ron is hard. I tentatively put him as an heir, but I wasn't at all sure about that. Like, it was just I guess. I can definitely see him as, like, a page of blood, and, like, pages and knights are the opposite, the active-passive flips of each other.
I don't know. I could see... Now that you've brought it up, I definitely could see him as a Knight of Blood in terms of, like, serving the... I mean, he's the loyal best friend archetype. That's a really good way of serving the bonds and relationships in your life, is being there for your friends, you know?
He's more active, though. I think you're right about Paige. Even if I do hate the mental image.
Ron in little undies.
Yeah, why?
If it helps, I never think about God tier outfits when I do these.
Except for all the times where it's been brought up anyway. Although that's mostly because bards might not even be like that. Gansey could have just made it up, and honestly, that seems more likely.
You know, who knows? Who can say with him, with the mans?
It's Gansey.
Who can say? He certainly won't. Okay, so what do you think about Page of Blood for Ron, then?
Yeah, you've convinced me.
Okay, cool. Next up, Hermione.
I put her as mind. Tentative rogue, but not really. She's a bit of a know-it-all and single-minded in, like, how that sort of manifests itself. Trezzy is, like, absolutely convinced that her way of looking at the world is correct. Tends to, to focus on, like, the concrete and, like, sort of pretend that the abstract isn't... Not pretend, but, like, the... luck doesn't actually matter sort of way of looking at things, even though it clearly does. Like, we could have been killed or worse, expelled, is a very mind sentiment. I was thinking about reading Ida as a mind player from the My Hero episode. Definitely is like Knight of Mind. I don't remember what you guys ended up going with, but that's the one I settled on while listening to that. I tend to form my own conclusions that are usually pretty close, but sometimes are like a little bit away while listening.
I have Hermione fully as Rose Lalonde. I have her as a Durst dreamer and as a seer of light. She seeks to understand everything she can and has a natural aptitude for magic as an arcane, light-coded thing. She also has ties to history and scholarship in the specifics of the text. The books she reads are largely histories. A history of magic, Hogwarts a history, notable wizards of the 20th century. Like, all of the books that she names in book 1 are histories. They're not any other kind of textbook.
Although she does kind of have, like, encyclopedic knowledge. Like, Terezi has very encyclopedic knowledge of law. Like, in a way that's, like, mind very much, like, single. Like Rose's knowledge and stuff is very vast in a more, like, across the board sort of distribution of knowledge. Like she knows shit. She knows shit in a very mysterious and roundabout way. Like Vriska too, like their sources of knowledge are mysterious and arcane, but like, and even though the books that Hermione reads are magic, they're very much books. They're like even the diaries, like Vriska had to go on a magic quest for them. With like Hermione just goes to the library.
And that's why, like, I feel like light both does and doesn't work for her, because on the one hand, the books she's reading are about magic. They are about something that ostensibly is weird and arcane, and the occult and arcane are a very light-coded thing.
The light in Harry Potter, the magic in Harry Potter isn't particularly mysterious. It's just Latin.
Like, on the other hand, like, they're going to school, you know? Like, they're not performing rituals, they're doing their homework. They are
Harry is the one
going
with, like,
to
the
class.
closest to the weirdness of magic. His, like, bond with Voldemort is very much the weird side of magic, and, like, love and stuff is very... It's not, like, and it's not Rose's brand of light, because Rose is an edgy goth bitch, and I love her. But it's the, like, there are multiple different ways of looking at, like, the same thing.
The connection between mind and light is also really interesting, because you're absolutely right in terms of mind being very articulate and rational and regular. The place I would disagree with you, though, is when I think of mind, I think of the law. I think of procedure and operation, whereas with light, I think about history and scholarship generally. And so I think Hermione, over the course of her arc, eventually decides that her knowledge and her friends are more important than following the rules. And so being a passive light player is something she does more than being a mind player.
I think she's role-playing as mind, perhaps, or... Although, like, again, like, Terezi sort of evolved, very much starts as more close to law, and the magic, like, the normal magic in Harry Potter is, law-like. I mean, like, there's a ministry of magic. There's, like, rules of what magic is and isn't okay, and she's very much, we could be killed or worse, expelled.
The difference between law and justice.
And that's something that the mind players very much struggle with. It's also interesting about, like, that I found, like, she would never let them copy on her homework. How will you learn? But by asking her to read it through, they got the right answers anyway. How, like, Terezi is very much, like, to Dave, how she's like, I'm not just going to tell you, I'm going to show you.
Yeah, I can see mind for her.
I think she's a bit more active than, I'd say mage if we're going to give her a knowledge class, though. Although I hesitate to give mage because I do not understand Solix, and I want more of the classes and aspects that we don't have as much on.
I would argue for Seer because of her role in the narrative. She very much does fall into the category of using her knowledge for the sake of the party and bestowing the things she knows to her friends for the sake of her friends.
Are you a witch or not? Where she's like, Ron, there's the way to get out of this plant. Why the fuck is this magic artifact locked behind puzzles? That's really dumb. The way to get out of this problem is to use this piece of knowledge, and then Ron has to be the one to tell her, you're a wizard, or what. Also, I hate that they're gendered like that. Those are two different classes in D&D. Those aren't gendered. They weren't gendered.
Witch isn't even a class in D&D.
Yeah, but, like, you know what I mean. Like, they're different ways of working with magic. They're not distinct.
Yeah, I think Hermione definitely, like, a lot of it from my perspective is from, like, this is just how a lot of women are written, but she ends up helping the men in her life more than herself a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, Seer. I just didn't want to give her Terezi. She could have been Terezi if she was more interesting.
That's a take. I think Seer of Mind could work for her, just as a different manifestation of that
Durst.
class and aspect.
She very much has a defined image of herself, even if she's not always right about it, and more self-aware than her friends.
So, Seer of Mind, Durst. Okay, last of our kids, Malfoy.
Prince of Life. Or no, Knight of Life.
Oh shit, really?
What?
That's exactly what I got
Knight of Life?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, I'm glad we're in agreement.
Do you want to go back down your reasons?
I mean, basically he's serving the status quo of the rich and the privileged.
Yeah, he's also, I put life, because he's kind of a bitch. I think being kind of a bitch is a very important part of life as an aspect. Light and life both have element of wealth, but light is more like wealth as a function of time and history, like very much an understanding of like, with like an understanding of all that comes with, like thievery too is a part, that's partially Vriska.
Light having to do with fortune as in just the literal having of wealth, where life deals with wealth as a thing of privilege, as a social force.
And how it changes.
Yeah, as a social force, rather than as a concrete thing. Because Jane doesn't have all the money of Crocker Corp in the comic, right?
She has the potential.
She has that privilege.
There's this term that I think of with when it comes to life. I can't remember, but like this concept of, I find life as an aspect really fascinating because like a lot of media tends to do this thing with life where it's the good one. Like, it's like a healing element. But, like, in real life, life and evolution, it's kind of a clusterfuck. There's, like, everything is alive and messy. When you have too much growth in an area, it'll, like, choke each other out. I don't think that, like, the social Darwinist types are right, because, like, one of the most important factors in evolution, if not the most, is community. Like, most apex predators, including humans, are pack animals for a reason, and, like, forming bonds. That doesn't mean that life is neat. I mean, like, that social Darwinist bullshit is also part of life as an aspect, and, like, the sort of the false side of it, because, or the negative side of it, because, like, capitalism.
It's the moral neutrality of the aspects, where, like, there are some aspects that are villain-coded, time specifically, but none of them are specifically moral things. They can all be good and bad, and that's what makes them so fun and interesting.
Also, the colors for life, the green. Malfoy is just very green.
It is a lot, yeah.
Also, the Slytherin thing is pretty, like, the house system. And another thing about Harry Potter that's pretty fucked up, the house system. They just put all the races together and then expected them to come out, then just didn't care.
That's the thing about J.K. Rowling's writing, is the idea of the houses aren't supposed to make sense in world. They are a way for the audience to categorize who's good, who's bad, and who doesn't matter. That's why Hufflepuff gets no screen time, because it's the background character house, you know?
Yeah, and it's like Gryffindor is the good. Like, it tries to get more nuanced later on, but, like, Gryffindor being the good guys kind of rubs me the wrong way. Because it's, like, it's the house of, like, the loud, the boisterous, the courageous, like, that, like, the boys. Like, it's very much, like, I feel like there's a lot of toxic masculinity going on in House Gryffindor that's not addressed. And I feel like there's a lot of bullying going on in this school, and nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to want to fight back, or, like, Anyway, this is why I have my definitely not projecting in any way, shape, or form Harry Potter fanfic, which I'm definitely going to finish, about Harry being trans and yelling at every single teacher and for their other failure to do their goddamn jobs and deal with the fucking huge. I was about to say huge and enormous, at the same time, so I just sort of combined those. Yeah, the enormous bullying problem at Hogwarts. Like everyone hates Umbridge, and they should. But, like, what were the other teachers doing? There shouldn't be that potential for the abuse of power in the first place. Snape was there exploiting it, and he gets off the hook because he's, like, deep down, okay, I can hold off on Snape.
Well, the thing about that is the next character I have on my list is Snape.
Oh, Snape is a Prince of Time.
Ooh, interesting. I had him as a Knight of Void.
Oh, and I put him as Durst.
Yeah, Durst, for sure.
A Knight of Void.
Specifically for his role in this book, he is serving Dumbledore through the hiding of information. Like, it's pretty simple, even though his overall character is much more complex.
J.K. Rowling 1v1 IRL over Snape.
Yeah, Snape is an incel. Why did you want us to sympathize with him?
Yeah, it's not even that he's incel and she tries to make us sympathize with him. It's that he's an incel, and that's why she wants us to sympathize with him. His sympatheticness, his alleged sympatheticness, is tied up in his romantic motivation to a dead person.
I have this fucking tweet saved. Hold on. It's from somebody at watery_day on Twitter. Severus Snape dying. Harry, your mom was fine as hell. She was so fucking hot. I wanted to bang the shit out of her, but she friend-zoned me for your dumbass Chad father. Dies. Harry, wow, He was a great man after all.
God, that really is what it is. Also, the voice you did just now sounded a lot like Rick Sanchez.
Oh no. Oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry.
God, imagine the Harry Potter, but instead of Snape is just played by Rick. I don't even mean the person who voices him, like acting that. I just mean Rick from Rick and Morty. Actually, I would watch that.
It's the fucking Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where there's just this, like, 12 frames a second animated adult cartoon character in the middle of Hogwarts.
Honestly, would it change that much?
No, he's Dumbledore.
What? Rick Sanchez?
Yeah, like, everyone thinks he's really cool, but he's an abusive dick.
Fuck Dumbledore also. I'm getting to him.
Seriously?
Fuck Dumbledore.
Back to Snape, though, real quick. Why did you have him as a Prince of Time? I'm interested in your reasoning.
I'm less sure about the aspect, but Prince, I mean, like, to go back to the Amporas, like, there's very much the sort of, like, desperation. I think princes relate to their aspect by, like, having too much of it, and that's why they destroy it, like, and end up overcompensating for that a little bit. Like, Aridin is just so goddamn delusional in terms of, like, the aspect. Like, his hope is just, like, overpowering him to, like, the reality that exists around him, and also they're like, so caught up in their own bullshit that they sort of forget to care about other people. Like, princes kind of just need to go outside and get off their computer and stop arguing with people on Reddit for 5 fucking seconds, and maybe they'll calm down.
Princes tend to deal with, for all the moral neutrality that makes the classes and aspects so interesting, princes have the most explicit, like, bad shit associated with them.
They're dangerous.
They tend to be dangerous to themselves. Because, like, I've mentioned this before, but, like, each aspect, or each class has its own specific verbiage, where a thief steals and a rogue allows things to be stolen, right? It's that variation on the verbiage.
The prince is, like, one of the few that's, like, actually, Dirk is the example that Calliope explains that to. Which is interesting because what her perspective is.
One of the things about active classes, or about all classes, but I see it more with active classes, is that along with that verbiage, their aspect has the verb done to them. So, like, Roxy would be totally fine just hanging out in the background, being everybody's friend, not really taking that much of an active part, but her own irrelevancy is stolen from her by the Condesce. Or Gamzee, through the Soap or Pies, has his own rage, his own violence, stolen from him. Yes, destroyed from him. And princes especially have that. But they do it to themselves.
Like, they're self-harming.
Exactly. Where passive classes, outside forces enact something on their aspect. With active classes, the person does it to themselves. So a prince will destroy their own aspect as it exists within themselves. Aridin might destroy hope in people like Terezi when he starts Murderstuck because she doesn't have any hope for the future, but he also destroys his own hope for a better future.
A lot of their problems come from, like, I mean, like, when they spiral, it's like a lot of the active classes' problems are because of things they do, like, are from self-harm, versus passive are more harmed by society. Not that the reason, but, like, self-harm doesn't exist in a vacuum. Like, it's caused by those external pressures leading them to, like, those external pressures exist, but the actual harm is more direct.
Like, I mean, yeah, you're right. Like, those outside influences exist in all of their cases, but active classes tend to be more proactive in finishing the chain. Like, the line from outside influence to whatever thing they're doing.
Dirk and Hal's and Lil Hal are fascinating. I can't think about Lil Hal seriously anymore because Hal can on Tumblr trans my gender.
God.
Dirk Alexander Broseph Strider, if you're out there, thank you. Anyway, I have more notes on this. The sort of, like, the parallels between like Aridin and Bet Nor and, like, Dirk and Celeborn, they think they understand, like, it's kind of like The Witch is Familiar, except they're not really getting anything out of it. A prince sort of implies the existence of a king. Also, the half-blood prince. Neat coincidence there. I'm less sold on Time because villain coding, and Snape is very much villain-coded, and stuck in the past a little bit.
A Prince of Time feels a little bit like a Seer of Light to me, where a Seer of Light is the knowledge-knowledge combo, a Prince of Time is a destruction-destruction combo. I don't know, I think Prince works for him a lot in terms of his larger characterization. I might argue Prince of Blood, I think Prince of Blood, probably. One quick one before we move on to our big two old men, Quirrell.
Quirrell? Oh, I didn't have anything for him.
Okay, I gave him Witch of Rage.
Besides complaining about, like, how, hey, isn't it kind of, like, the stutter thing is ableism much? Also, him and Hagrid are, like, the only two characters to have their accents transliterated. That's, also the turban thing? Like, I don't know enough to say what kind of racism that is, but it feels like that's racist on some level.
There's no good outcome for Quirrell as a character, because either J.K. Rowling wrote in the turban to imply he's a spooky brown, or in universe, he's a white dude who's appropriating turbans from, like, actual living religions. So, like,
I think it's said that, like, he got it as a present from someone, or, like, at least that's what he says.
Because he's hiding Voldemort or whatever, but, like, you can do that with a backwards baseball cap. Like, you don't need...
I was just imagining Yankee Quirrell.
God. I had him as a Witch of Rage, largely because he has a familiar in the form of Voldemort, and he doesn't make a whole lot of sense, actually.
Oh, God. Yeah, what the fuck?
Like, he doesn't really hold up in... When you look at him and think about him, he doesn't really make sense, because he just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's never specified whether he used to be a Death Eater, or whether he's a newcomer to the cause. Like,
he just got brain hijack or something. Yeah, rage.
He comes out of nowhere, and he doesn't matter for the rest of the series. Like,
honestly, imagine if instead of whatever the fuck that happens in, like, when, like, at the end, he just, like, shows up on a motorcycle and runs over Voldemort. And it's like, and then never shows up again.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Honestly, yeah, that's that.
That'd be pretty cool.
Can't believe the cursed child was Quirrell.
Oh my God.
I actually went and saw
He's Voldemort's secret love child.
There isn't actually that much that we know about, like, the ideology of the Death Eaters, besides the fact that they're racist against Muggles. Like, a lot of racists in real life are also sexist. Like, there's, like, a huge overlap. Like, why are they racist against Muggles besides the obvious, they don't have magic? Like, it's not a comparison, it's not an allegory that works. Like, if you've seen, like, Jack Saint's video on, animal racism allegories, it's, like, that same problem. Because it's, like, is this a story about magic users, or is this a story about race?
It's the liberal view of what racism is. Like,
oh, that makes sense.
I mean, the Mudblood, Pureblood example is actually really a good one for illustrating this point, where, like, a person like J.K. Rowling doesn't think that racism is bad because race is a made-up thing that shouldn't have any bearing on
literally anything ever.
Electoral politics. Yeah, what she thinks is we should pity the poor people of color and be nicer to them because we're better than them, and it's our responsibility to be kind to those beneath us.
Oh God, you're so right. And it's like the Dursleys are, like, they're very bad. There's, like, an example of, like, how, like, a very both-sidesy example. Like, and the Dursleys are mean to Harry because Harry has magic. No, they're not mean to him because he has magic. They're mean to him because they're abusers. And there's a lot that could be done. Like, there's a, like, the Dudley and Harry dynamic is, like, a pretty classic example of the golden child versus, the scapegoat, like, dynamic in abusive situations. But she didn't do that on purpose. There's potential there that she's not going to use, and she's never going to use it.
Yeah, absolutely not. Because that's not what was going through her mind. She was fully just thinking of, I need Harry's home situation to be bad so that his school situation can look all the better.
And it's not actually that much better.
Yeah, like, when you actually look at it, because then she goes, and the place she wants us to think is cool is filled with, like, boarding school style discipline, where it's like a bunch of homework and kids are getting slapped on the wrist with rulers.
They're
and
sent
like
into the dark, this murder forest full of murder beasts.
Yeah, like, it's a joke that the detention guy isn't allowed to hang students by the thumbs anymore. It's like, that's actual medieval torture, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he's still working here at all is kind of horrible.
Oh, I forgot to mention another character whose accent is transcribed. Isn't his too?
I'm not sure. I listen to the audiobooks because I have ADHD and I can't read.
Same. I just read them in the today and yesterday, so I wouldn't forget, and I've still forgotten most of it. But I was listening to that new audiobook that they're doing with the original cast, and it's for a little bit, but it's not all the way done. And
honestly, for the nostalgia factor, that sounds kind of fun. I might check it out.
Yeah, they're pretty good readings. The first one is by
Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, the Harry of Potter. There's a couple of others that aren't Voldemort and Dumbledore that I did. Aren't words. I did Page of Blood for Neville because his standing up to it, the thing about at the end where it's the bravest thing is standing up to your friends, and he's if Ron has a lot of potential and is used as comic relief and is throughout the whole thing, then Neville is that, but on steroids. I like that expression.
Yeah, Neville is definitely the most comic relief character.
Also, fuck the cursed child, but that bit about Cedric killing him being the thing that changed the course of the war is very, very Paige.
Yeah, because Neville does a lot of shit behind the scenes.
And he's him killing the snake is the gay bubble of hope of the masterpiece.
Yeah, or it's
I love Homestuck. I love that there's a word that I can say. I also hate Homestuck a little bit, but that's what Homestuck wants you.
You have to hate Homestuck a little bit to engage with it.
Yeah.
I think Page of Blood works for Neville, yeah.
Which is weird because I don't dislike Neville, and I can Vriska.
Yeah, I think Neville would have been a more interesting protagonist, personally.
Yeah. I wouldn't have read it, but I think that Luna deserved to be the protagonist. Or Ginny.
Oh, absolutely.
Ginny deserved to have trauma.
Neville is a more interesting character than Harry, but Luna and Ginny are the only actually good characters.
That's the other one. Yeah. They're just vibing, you know?
They're just living their best life. Our final two, let's start with Dumbledore.
Oh, and I had McGonagall as a sylph.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Dumbledore, Sylph of Light, and Durst.
Sylph of Light, that's interesting. I have him as a Mage of Blood.
Interesting. I was thinking it would make sense for them to be Lord and Muse and Voldemort, but no. If anything, I could be convinced of Lord of Light, but that sounds like God. So no. Yeah, Lord of Light.
Yeah, I ended up not having any Lords or Muses for this. I had him as a mage because he, understanding is his thing. He is the wise mentor. His knowledge of things is one of his main narrative focuses, but he isn't keen on sharing any of that information, which tracks for Solix specifically.
And Newland.
Yeah, I heard some meta recently of mage is active in that you keep the knowledge for yourself. You don't share it around.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I had Blood because the information he keeps specifically has to do with the relationship between Harry and other characters. With the Seventh Horcrux, the wand connection, the history of Lily and James, Sirius, all of these secrets that Dumbledore has are about Harry's bonds and the relationships he has to other people.
Okay. I have thoughts on Dumbledore. Dumbledore has thoughts now?
Well, I wouldn't say he has thoughts, but apparently you do, and I'd love to hear them.
Fuck Dumbledore, first and foremost. Those are some of my thoughts. I assigned him Arania. Darcerania.
Okay. Yeah, Sylph of Light, that makes sense.
My thing about sylphs is that they're kind of passive-aggressive bitches. And, even Kanaya is a passive-aggressive bitch. Kanaya is very passive-aggressive. People don't read her plenty of people don't read her that way because she talks in, because of her, like, quirk, and she's so passive-aggressive that people don't realize that she's being aggressive.
That's part of why she has so much chemistry with Rose, is, like, they kind of have fun poking at each other and needling.
Yeah, very neurodivergent of her, honestly. Like she keeps making these jokes where it's like, Karka is just like in, like, Openbound, where she's like, or not Openbound, but one of the walk-around games, I think it's past Karkat Wake Up, where she's like, where Karka is like, what's a squirrel? And, like, she's like, squirrel is the human word for nut creature. And then, like, Karkat's like, what? And, like, that's like, oh yeah, that's me. Except I'm, like, louder about it and laugh openly, which is why I'm not Kanaya, I'm Vriska. But, yeah, Vriska also does that, but she tries to explain it sometimes, and then sometimes she doesn't. I think sometimes her like, some of the things that come off as Vriska's, like, I think at several points in her life, she has just had, like, long-running pranks on other people that she never explains, and never, like, nobody ever else figures out that it's supposed to be a prank, or even that she's up to anything. Anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked by thinking about how awesome Vriska is. But yeah, so, passive-aggressive bitches, all of them, and more manipulative than they mean to be, or understand themselves to be. They sort of see selfless. They're like the it's like the whole thing about, like, dangerous people needing to be taken care of, and, like, her putting herself in that caretaking role is, like, very self-serving of her, but, like, because it's, like, for other people, like, it's for the good. But they're also messy bitches that love the drama, and Arania. And when they do get into, like, the action themselves, their impact is pretty big. I mean, Kanaya just ends murder stuff and makes every lesbian across the world go wild, and some of them even. The lipstick with Eridan's blood still on it, chef's kiss.
Yeah, iconic.
Slay. Literally. Vampires and lesbians aren't fun. Don't let me get started about vampires and lesbians. You'll be here for a long time.
This episode would never end if I let you start.
Yeah.
So, okay, Dumbledore is Orania. I can definitely see it. He's definitely put himself into the position of caretaker, not because anyone wants him there, but because he wants himself there, and no one's gonna stop him.
I could see hope as an aspect. I gave him the same aspect as Harry on purpose. This is more of a next episode sort of thing, but ancestors there, I mean, like, obviously, like, Harry's literal ancestor is, like, James in Lily Potter, and, like, Sirius too. Like, in the terms of, like, and I put, like, in Draco as, like, the same sort of thing as Voldemort, sort of, like, representative of those two. I hate to call them ideologies because they're not, like, J.K. Rowling didn't think them through that much, but, like, positions, I guess. And, like, okay, this is kind of a Vriska thing. There's a missing hole in Harry Potter discourse, and, like, the discourse contained within Harry Potter, where leftism is. Harry is, like, the next generation of liberals after Dumbledore, and Malfoy is the next generation of conservatives after Voldemort, and there's the missing leftism there, and that's Vriska. There's like an Into the Spider-Verse, there's a Vriska-shaped hole in the story.
Yeah?
I mean, you can't convince me Luna isn't a leftist.
Oh, no, yeah. Luna full anarcho-communist.
Luna is the anarcho-communist cat girl that is turning the frogs gay.
Yeah. She's the anarcho-communist cat girl they warned you about.
Yeah. And honestly, good for her.
I'm so proud. She radicalizes Ginny.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Like, the most lefty these books get are Hermione. And Hermione's most leftist stance is, maybe we should free slaves.
And she's portrayed as bad for that, as wrong for that.
Yeah, she's the butt of the joke.
There's a reason that these books are associated with hope so much in Homestuck. Because they're a fantasy. Like, I mean, all, like, fantasy is fantasy. But, like, the way the world works is, like, it's a neoliberal fever dream.
That's one way to put it. I could see Sylph Light for Dumbledore. I think
what's interesting, although another thing that's interesting about Dumbledore is how weird, like, he obfuscates his, like, there's something weirdly voidy about, and, like, somewhere between void and hope with how he acts. I don't want to use the word crazy, but yeah, he acts crazy.
I mean, he's doing a Yoda, where he's making himself look silly so that people underestimate him.
It seems like a waste of time, honestly. Also, he totally shows, like, and now Dumbledore will win the House Cup because I want them to. I mean, now Gryffindor will.
Can I convince you of Mage of Light?
Perhaps.
Specifically because his keeping secrets is a thing that is central to his character, where every book it's revealed that there's some detail he left out, something he kept from Harry.
And Harry is like going up the walls over it eventually. It's ragey.
It's definitely ragey in terms of like from Harry's perspective, but he makes too much sense within the story itself to fit with rage for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd stand my ground for Mage because I think keeping secrets for his own gain is a big thing.
Mage of Hope.
Ooh.
I wanted to fit that hope in there somewhere, and I think the hopiness of the story is coming from him. He's very much of like defining like the structure of the narrative, like by being the character that he is, like with like the position that he's in. I can also see Lord, like two lords. I have Voldemort as a lord because I mean, in addition to just like being known as Lord Voldemort,
he's got a lot of lord stuff going on.
I mean, Celeborn, there's Voldemort in Celeborn.
Yeah. I could do Mage of Hope.
Wow, doing this has really made me realize just how much Harry Potter there is in Homestuck.
Yeah, for all of its weirdness and meandering and meta stuff, Homestuck is all around a fairly conventional story, all things considered.
Like, I'm not even, that too. And also I'm thinking of, like, parts of it that are just roasts of Harry Potter.
I mean, Eridan is who Harry Potter would turn out to be realistically, you know?
And the epilogues thing with the naming kids after the, not to broach the you-know-who and but yeah, it took me longer than it should have to think, oh right, Harry Potter did that thing in the epilogues with the stupid names. Also, I think that Yiffany Longstocking is one of Nepeta's OCs. Do not interact.
God.
Rose and Jade would name their kid after one of Nepeta's OCs that they spent time role playing with.
I hope that's where it came from.
Honestly, that would be just so Nepeta.
Our last one before we move on to shipping. Voldy himself.
Lord of Life.
Did you say life or light?
Life.
Okay. I had Voldemort. This is real cursed. I had Voldemort as a Prince of Heart. He's got splinters. The Horcruxes. Like, that's the biggest thing. But he also seeks to destroy relationships and identities. One example is his torture of Neville's parents.
Oh yeah, I forget he did that.
Yeah, it's real fucked up.
And so that's never really, it's addressed, but it's not. Also, torture in these books, it's like, yeah, that's a thing that happened. Hermione gets tortured, for a little bit there in the Deathly Hallows.
Yeah.
That's not addressed.
Because Bellatrix is the one who tortured his parents, and so she does it to him, thinking it'll be just as easy, but he, resists.
No, and to Hermione, too.
Bellatrix tortures a lot of people.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Voldemort.
Yeah. I had him as a Prince of Heart because his whole deal is the destruction of identity and of relationships, where he destroys his own identity by giving himself a new name and by erasing his half-blood heritage.
Oh yeah, I forget that's the exact same sort of logic as homophobes are secretly gay.
I mean, he's Milo Yiannopoulos. He's the gay conservative. Well, I say conservative. Milo Yiannopoulos is just a straight-up neo-Nazi.
Yeah,
but
and so is Voldemort. Except not...
He's OG wizard Nazi.
Yeah, Grindelwald. Those movies are terrible. I haven't even seen the second one, but I've absorbed how much people hated them from the video essays.
He tries to disconnect Harry from, he severs the tie from Harry to his family by killing his parents. He separates families all the time. That's a recurring tactic he uses. So maybe Thief of Heart, but yeah, Prince of Heart, because he destroys his own identity, his sense of self, and his relationships, and he does it to others as well for his own gain.
It says his name is a stupid acronym. I am Lord Voldemort. That's dumb.
Yeah, it's silly.
He's dumb. Now I'm thinking about rage. I don't know if, does he make sense? I mean, these books very much oscillate between rage and hope. If there's a set of aspects that could, if you can define the core aspects of Homestuck as Homestuck being a story about breath and blood, then Harry Potter is a story that's about hope and rage. The rage isn't intentional. It's it's rage role-playing as hope, or vice versa.
Voldemort's movements through the plot definitely make sense, because he's usually at the center of whatever mystery the book is about, right? And so our ability to piece together the consistency of his actions is really important, and it is there. So he does make sense in that way, but he's also a liberal's idea of what a fascist is, which means he doesn't have an ideology.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really make sense from any sort of position.
The question of, like, Doyleist versus Watsonian readings of Harry Potterism, it's hard because, like, her ideology just, like, permeates them in, like, a way that's, like, because, like, the norm is liberalism, that's why they're so popular, because there's nothing political about them, read the heavy air quotes, because they match up with the political norms at the time of release. I watched this pretty good video, the Harry Potter and the End of History, about Harry Potter and neoliberalism, and it's like, yeah, it's something that doesn't question its own politics in a way that...
Yeah, because it doesn't see itself as political.
Yeah. The politics weren't relevant to Harry's story.
I mean, they definitely were, and it would have been a better story if they had been included, but I could see him as a Lord of Heart, because I would argue Heart for Voldemort.
Yeah, I see
because identity and heritage and, like, his place in... Homestuck and Harry Potter both have blood shit happening, with social castes determined by
those
your blood.
Mudblood, like, it's... Should we beep that out in post? Mudblood. Because... That's such a stupid slur. I mean, all slurs are stupid, but, like...
I would say Lord of Heart would make the most sense for Voldy.
I can see that. Harry Potter is interesting. There's a lot of similarities between Harry Potter and Homestuck, except Homestuck does it on purpose. Whether or not that's good, it depends on a lot, and, like, how far that... It depends on a lot, but... I also thought that there was some interesting void stuff going on with the you-know-who. Also, that's really childish, the you-know-who thing. How, like, it seems like a very artificial way to, like, have, like, the similarities between Harry and Dumbledore be there, like, the parallels there. Like, why don't other Muggle-born say it, too? Like, they wouldn't have this, they would also not have the reason, like, to start out with. I mean, there's something interesting going on there, but it's another one of those instances. This book series is a page of hope. Wait, I didn't need to disguise it, just... I did not mean to diagnose Harry Potter with the series as Jake English, but a failed Jake English, unrealized potential out the wazoo. Very controversial.
You're right, but you shouldn't say it.
I really shouldn't.
Okay, let's move on and do some shipping. Let's move on to quadrants.
Okay, do you want to hear the cursed McGonagall and Snape take?
I don't. But say it so that I can use it as the cold open.
Okay. There's this scene where Harry has just got into trouble for being really good at flying. And then McGonagall's first reaction to that is, look, a seeker, I can finally show up Snape.
Oh my god. I knew this was coming. Oh no.
Alternatively, it could be auspitism with Dumbledore keeping the two of them from murdering each other, because honestly, if Dumbledore wasn't there protecting Snape, then Snape would have gone and snapped it, his neck would have been snapped in half by my furious fingers. I mean, somebody's furious hands. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, McGonagall, Snape.
I hate it.
I know, I hate it too.
Sin, you've done a bad thing.
I know. I mean, not that you've got grounds to speak. Olaf is not.
I'm so glad I don't have to say anything. And I can still cause aneurysms in people's brains with this. This is going to be the thing I'm known for the rest of my life, is saying that Olaf is the Vriska of Frozen.
No! I'm going to get...
It's my fucking opus.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I did just say Harry Potter is the Jake English of children's literature. So
that's the thing about being right, is that people hate you for it.
No, we do not. We are not the same.
Oh, really? Oh, are you sure about that? Are you positive?
Well, you're dark and I'm Vriska, so yes, there are parallels. But I'm better.
Okay, sure. You know, there's gonna come a day when I do an episode on Frozen 2.
I need to watch that movie. I still haven't seen it.
It's pretty good.
Maybe I'll agree
I
with
like
you
it a
about
whole lot.
Olaf if I see that one.
Quite possibly. So let's do a quick shipping round before we move to the Vriska, because we're at a couple hours recording session. Let's do the kids for the students.
Jerry is one of the reasons that the Spades Quadrant exists in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't really understand, the troll romance. I mean, I liked it, but I didn't get it until, that episode, until when you guys started talking about it, oh, yes, it comes from fanfic tropes. And I was like, oh, right, it comes from fanfic tropes.
Yeah. Drarry is one of the ships that spawned pitch romance, right? It is the mold from which the Spades Quadrant was cast.
There's a lot of troll culture in Harry Potter. I didn't really think about it.
Yeah. Harry and Ron. I say pale.
I think that it's impossible to do. I think that those three are in an Ashen. With
Harry, Ron, and Hermione.
Yeah, with and it sort of fluctuates a little bit who's in which role. Bits turn more flushed than others, and bits turn more spades than others, depending on the time. But yeah, with Harry primarily as the leaf, there are definitely bits where it's the other ways around.
Yeah, I can see it. Especially because, whether or not J.K. Rowling intended it, all three of the main kids have, romantic tension with each other.
Yeah.
All of them.
They're probably part of the reason why Ashen came about in the first place.
I mean, Harry, in the later books especially, Ron and Hermione constantly at each other's throats, and Harry trying and failing to step in. Yeah.
Yeah, that sure is a thing.
Wildcard ship, Ron and Malfoy.
The entire triad that is, the main trio is also in spades with Malfoy.
Yeah. I would see Ron and Malfoy as Ashen, and they need somebody to step in. They'd need a third leaf.
Is there going to be a third party? Probably not.
But somebody should be. No one wants to, but
Draco
they
just
should.
needs to be, hit in the face until he starts drinking his Respect Anyone juice.
He's Eridan. He is.
At least he doesn't hit on people. Although, actually, that might have made... I don't know, again, with, Spades romance, it makes, yeah, he is just hitting on the trio, constantly. It made it interesting to put these guys as trolls.
I mean, we might end up doing that for the session, who knows. Okay, final section, before we finish up. Let's diagnose the Vriska.
Oh, wait, Dumbledore and Grindelwald was hearts to spades, or pale to spades.
I think flush.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and also, Jordan, and commentating effectively as
God.
I am spades. I'm doing I'm tracing the little heart spade symbol out with my hand, but you can't see me.
Okay, with our shipping students with abstract concepts out of the way.
J.K. Rowling spades nuance.
J.K. Rowling and trans people as Ashen with no one to mediate.
You're right.
We just have to beat the shit out of her, and maybe she'll calm down a little.
She won't, though.
No, she won't. Let's do this dang thing and diagnose the Vriska.
I stand by what I said earlier about, the Vriska is leftism. Either that or J.K. Rowling is Vriska, and I don't want to think about that.
No. Oh, I'm not even a huge fan of Vriska, and that sucks to think about.
It pains me to say, as the Vriska of this podcast, it's now my podcast, by the way. I have stolen the podcast.
You can come and take the Patreon earnings from my cold dead hands.
Okay, where? Where are you?
Fucking Patreon, man.
Well, I'm not going to fist fight you through the screen.
Well, fucking power up then. You're not gonna find me otherwise.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah. I mean, don't fucking dox me,
No.
but
That Vriska would dox someone, though.
Vriska has doxed people.
Yeah, she has. Wait, isn't that what Dualscar did to Mindfang?
A little bit.
Dualscar totally doxed Mindfang.
God, that's the cold open. Orphaner Dual Scar, doxed Spinneret Mindfang, today on Will at Homestuck. I have a take on who Vriska is, but you, on this episode at least, are the resident Vriska expert. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the Vriska in this is either that or Tonks, but Tonks doesn't get to be relevant enough. So.
I think it's Hermione.
Although I think it's
specifically
movie Hermione is kind of interesting because she does totally steal the spotlight from Ron.
there's a lot of wanting to be seen in her characterization of like it's not enough for her to be smart, she needs people to know she's smart. She wants to be seen as a smart person, as somebody who knows shit. Like, if she really wanted to stop Harry and Ron from doing bad shit, she would just tell the professors whenever they were off on misadventures, but she tags along. She doesn't just want you to stop, she wants you to know that she stopped you.
It's interesting. And she, her obliviating her parents in book 7 is definitely, although she doesn't, like, her parents are dentists. That's interesting. And it's like, oh yeah, I read an interesting take on, like, it's constantly mentioned how, like, Ron's family is, like, struggling for money and stuff, but they're still government employees. Like, they're struggling, but they never struggle too much. Like, there's nobody...
I mean, class isn't a thing J.K. Rowling wants to actually think about. She just wants you to sympathize with the Weasleys because they're poor.
Yeah, it's like, and yeah, there's just, it's like, it's pitying. It's about pity. Oh god. J.K. Rowling. Diamonds. One-sided okay, everyone. She's, like, she pities people, and that is very infuriating.
Again, she's a well-off white English woman. Like, she is full of the classic British pomp.
Yeah, Hermione doesn't really have she never really gets it, though. Like, never really gets to be in charge. There's something very Vriska about, like, the movie, the book-to-movie translation of her. She just fucking steals Ron's relevancy and everything interesting about him. Yeah, I'll say she's the Vriska, but, like, in that specific case.
So movie Hermione is a Vriska, book Hermione is a Terezi.
Yeah, she is in a Vrisdicament relationship with herself.
That's the take of the episode. I think we can leave that there.
Yeah.
You did it. You bookended our episode.
That was fun.
Fuck. Okay.
That was really fun.
Yeah, it's been fun talking to you, fun making a show. I have been the missing leftism.
And I have never heard a single word in my entire life.
And this has been Will at Homestuck. We will see you guys next week.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, follow us at WillitHomestuck on Twitter. If you want to throw us some money, check out our Patreon or Ko-fi, both of which are at WillitHomestuck. Join us again next episode when we take a look at Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Part 2, and put them kids in a suburb session.